Welcome to New Wave Global, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Asad Ejaz Butt. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined by Dr. Tahir Kamran, who's a professor of history at the Beaconhouse National University. He's author of a book that's doing very well recently. It's called Checkered Past. It's a book on history. We talk about that book also, but my primary focus today is to sort of initiate this conversation about what the Europe thinks right now, because there's a lot of focus on US when it comes to the fiasco that happened at the Oval Office a few weeks ago. But I want to sort of zoom out of the American politics. We'd focus a bit on American foreign policy, but my focus today would be Europe in particular, and how the American foreign policy and American sort of interventionism in the rest of the world has sort of what kind of consequences has that had for countries, especially in Europe. So those are things which will be part of my roundup today. We'll also sort of try to touch upon the history of some of these European nations and how their relationships with the US have evolved over time. But first, let me welcome Dr. Tahir Kamran. Thank you so much for joining, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um,
It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you so much for taking time, sir. As you know, I fell in love with your piece that you wrote in the news on Sunday, TNS last week. It was called Widening of the Gulf. You made a few
Mhm.
arguments about, the U.S. foreign policy, U.S. interventions in Europe, being sort of a cause of instability for those regions. And you quoted people like Sachs and Mearsheimer. You also talked about the vested economic interests of the Americans. But we'd get to the economic interest part later, the military-industrial complex. I'll start with this question about the American intervention in those regions being a cause of instability. Do you think that now that Trump is you use that term inward-looking policies, Trump is now
Mhm.
sort of reneging on his promises, backtracking from commitments, and taking this very inward-looking approach? Do you think, in a
Mhm.
way, that's better for these regions?
I think the Europe is in a state of ambivalence right now. And to put it differently, I think since 1945 and after Yalta Conference, when the Europe's map was redrawn and America's status was reviewed, and America emerged at the world stage as the decision maker for the entire free world, free quote unquote, free world. So the Western Europe in particular, it jostled together, and its only foreign policy, as Jeffrey Sachs says, was the loyalty to the British interest.
Hmm.
So now is the time, I think, when those differences which we have deciphered, we have seen on the question of Ukraine and Europe's relationship vis-a-vis Russia. Now things are falling apart. It's for the first time that there have been some symptoms among the European nations that they need to look inward too, instead of looking only towards America for their security purposes.
Hmm.
And your security policy is mostly predicated on your foreign policy or the vice versa. So Europe can, if Europe's positioning on Ukraine is different from USA. Now, since they have met, Americans and Russians and Ukrainians have met in Saudi Arabia, things are coming back to normalcy. But even then, the fissures have crystallized to such an extent that Europe will have to look towards its own self and spend more on its on security architecture. And particularly Germany and UK. These are the two countries which must change its priorities towards the security concerns. But the real problem here it is that the Americans as well as Russians both are a bit wary of allowing Germany to invest more on its security concerns because Germans, they have a very really past with Germans. So if Germans are allowed to invest more on its arms and ammunition and equipment of its armed forces, then Germans, how to rein them in? Probably it will be a far bigger task for anybody to control them. So things are different, and now genie is out of the bottle. Now if that genie goes back into a bottle, genie means that the differences which have come out very openly between Donald Trump and West European leadership. Now going back to the state of affairs which they had during Biden's time, that is yet to be seen. But one or two things that are being suggested is that Europe should stand on its own feet if America withdraws from NATO, or America says that well, its funding for NATO uh, is curtailed to a considerable extent, then they will have to contribute more to the pool of NATO. Uh, and uh, Jeffrey Sachs went, went on to say that now there is no need for NATO. NATO should have been dissolved in 1991. So if this thought prevails, and if Donald Trump and his acolytes they buy this argument, then the scenario will be changed altogether.
Thank you for a very elaborate answer, sir. One thing that comes to my mind is that, if you look at the discourse, the political discourse in the developing nations, America does not have very high approval ratings anywhere it has intervened, especially when it comes to the general public and being the torchbearer of liberal democracy, which people like Fukuyama, you talked about
Mhm.
1991, people like Fukuyama thought that
Mhm.
this is the end of history and the ultimate rise
Yeah.
of the neoliberal world, or perhaps the liberal democracy. But if you look at these democratic values and you talk to a person on the street, say in South Asia or elsewhere in the world, perhaps in the Middle East or even in Africa, where the Americans have spent billions of dollars under programs like the USAID, the US does not have great approval ratings. So
Mhm.
do you think that it's a win-win situation? This Trumpian isolationism is a win for the US itself that has fiscal worries and budgetary issues now. And it's also a win for the rest of the world who doesn't want an American intervention.
Well, first for America, well, if America does not want to spend for the developing nations, or it wants to withdraw this its funding schemes, then it will have to relinquish its position as a imperial as
As a
an
global
imperial
leader, as a global
as a
leader.
global leader. Yeah. People
Exactly.
won't like, particularly in
Hmm.
America, won't like to be called themselves as imperialists.
Right.
But that's how America is viewed in the developing world. That is imperialist power. So then, in order to be recognized as a global leader, you need to spend more, and you have to spend more on education and health services as British did when they were colonial power.
Hmm.
They spent awful lot of money on education and social development and so on and so forth. What America does is, which is beyond the comprehension of any person who has some sensitivity towards political science, is that it has supported its military complex, military industrial complex,
Hmm.
without with impunity, and it had funded either political elite, which is in cahoots with armed forces.
Hmm.
And that money hardly reaches down to the grassroots level.
Hmm.
Whether the scholarship schemes, they also are availed by those people who go to better institutions. Run of the mill, downtrodden class, it does not benefit from much of what America does.
Hmm.
Similarly, about health services now, is the corruption is prevalent in most of the developing worlds, but IMF never asks any questions about it. The most of the money that is given to developing countries, it is siphoned off by the political elite or military junta.
Yeah.
Therefore, people have grievance, and that grievance makes a lot of sense. That well, you give us money, and we have to pay taxes, and from those taxes, that money have to be returned, if at all it is returned. The all the burden falls on the lower middle classes and middle classes
Hmm.
and the professional classes like myself. Whereas what am I getting in return? You know. So this is a question that whenever I talk to the youth
Hmm.
that I teach at BNU or here and there, those are the questions which are agitated more often. And as compared to this, British established government college or FC college, Punjab University, then and then that in Peshawar, Edwards College. They made some meaningful investment. I'm not pro-British. I'm a very staunch believer in decolonization, and I'm inveterate foe of colonial regimes. But nevertheless, as compared to America, Great Britain seemed to be following the same approach.
I think, sir, you would agree that the difference is that the colonials were directly present here. They had a much larger physical presence in the region. So they afforded to build institutions, which is a luxury that the Americans didn't have. They could throw in the dollars, but it was hard for them to sort of build and sustain institutions. Do you think that?
But Asad, look at FC College. FC College is owned and is administered by Americans themselves. And ever since Americans have taken over FC College,
Yeah.
FC College has come alive.
Yeah.
And Lumps is run with the approval and endorsement of America. Most of people now you'll come back, and if you are sick and tired of civil service, you'll go to Lumps and teach there. You know, so uh, so uh, so it's not that it's a hands-off policy. Wherever American wants, they adopt hands-on policy.
I'm glad to know, sir, I have a job ready waiting for me in Pakistan.
Well, it's just a conjecture.
Unemployment won't be my fate as it is of a lot of Pakistani youth, but I'll
No,
come.
I was. If lumps don't offer you anything, you're most welcome to come to BNU. We have Hafiz Pasha, we have Dr. Akmal, we have, Shahid Kadar was
Right.
Vice Chancellor previously. Our Vice Chancellor is a young fellow who was in Boston. He is a graduate of University of Boston.
I know absolutely you have a star-studded team at BNU right now, and I work with most of those people or read their work, but I'll come back to
Yeah,
come
yeah,
back to Trump and the US.
yeah.
I'll do my career planning with you offline.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Do you think at this point uh, there are other than just sort of this political madness that Trump 1.0 did and now Trump 2.0 is doing.
Mhm.
Do you think there are other reasons for the Americans, perhaps economic reasons, to adopt these inward-looking nationalist kind of policies? And do you think, looking at the US of today, do you think it's rational for Trump to do so?
I think it's more to do with the failure of Biden administration,
Yeah,
Democrats have this problem of leadership after Obama,
right.
you know, and there was a vacuum and there was an anger also,
Hmm.
like in Michigan area where Muslims live.
Hmm.
They voted and en bloc to the Republicans,
Right.
and probably people who are a bit educated, literati of USA, probably there's mere inference uh, that those people don't like very strong establishments
Hmm.
which are not representatives of the public,
Yeah.
And this establishment, I think, which is the most powerful institutional base in not only America, but most of the liberal Western world also.
Hmm.
I think it's a bit of a Stockholm syndrome, since China has a very strong establishment
Yeah.
and it's a very controlled atmosphere.
Right.
That is rubbing off on America as well as on Europe. So people were a bit sick and tired of that arrangement where they were asked to cast vote, and then the whole decision making, like running over Afghanistan, initiating war with Iraq. General public was not attuned to such an idea. They were not in favor of such bellicose initiatives.
Hmm.
So I think that was a bit of a reaction towards such policies, which we can see. And one thing that Trump has, he is a very good communicator of such things, because he had he was at television, doing some shows. He speaks the language of a common man. He is not that um, uh, epitome of sophistication the way Obama was, or the way Clinton was. So he is a bit of a rustic person who speaks the language of very ordinary white Caucasian American. So he is related to, and then obviously this. Obama, then followed by the vice president in the former dispensation, coming from non-white backgrounds. I think he has been successful to a certain extent in mustering up a reaction towards such a scenario, which is, I think, which is not going to last very long because those people have a presence in America, and those people control, they represent vested interests of a certain kind. Like but it's quite a oxymoron. That on the one hand, he speaks for white Americans. On the other hand, look at his cabinet. No, Patel is there, and this and with
Elon
it.
Musk.
Elon Musk. Elon Musk is from.
I think he's
Uh,
South African
he
originally.
is South African, but he's white. He too is white.
He's white. Yeah. Yeah. He's
He
white.
is white. Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, but he
So,
doesn't have
so, so,
the
so, uh, so uh,
Anglo-American background.
and that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. So, on the one hand, he is talking in favor of white
Hmm.
American who mostly live in villages and rural areas. On the other hand, in his own team, we see lots of Indians and lots of non-white people, isn't
Hmm.
it? How many of his cabinet members non-white? Go three or four, or more than the UU, isn't it?
Sir, you said he might not make sense, but he speaks the language of the masses. He's a
Answers, yeah,
good
yeah.
he's a good communicator, galvanizes people around narratives, and then
Hmm.
there are big contradictions in what he says and what he
Yeah, yeah,
does.
yeah, 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 yeah.
For a
Very,
moment, I
very well, very well. You have just summarized it so well.
so for a moment.
Really,
For a moment, I thought that you shifted from the US to Pakistan and started talking about somebody who played cricket in the past, but I'll resist that urge. That will be for another conversation. But the reason I make this joke is because all populists are made of the same timber, aren't they?
well, the much is related to the context in which they emerge.
Operate.
And
Yeah.
their populism hinges on the failure of their predecessors.
Yeah.
Like people don't have trust on the people who can be considered as alternatives or substitutes to these
Right.
people whom we call populists. Like Narendra Modi, it was a failure of Congress, and Congress could not get away from its Indian National Congress could
Hmm.
not get away from the dynastic politics.
Yeah.
Uh, Even if Manmohan Singh was the prime minister who was calling shots, everyone knows.
What? I made a remark the other day that Trump is calling leaders one by one, handing out
Hmm.
casual insults,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
reprimanding
yeah.
them, and then
Yeah.
sending them with a nice box of candies. I call it the box of tariff candies that he's sending people back with. And Modi
Hmm.
was one of the
Yeah.
leaders who was sent back with tariff candies. And Trump
Hmm.
1.0 was very close to India. And India, Modi, I
Right.
think, came with great expectations in February. Do you think
Hmm.
that it would have come across as a shock and perhaps, some kind of a realignment is happening in South Asia as well when it comes to American foreign policy? Or you think this was insignificant?
Since China is next door neighbor of India, and despite their mutual trade is quite astronomical, quite high, the volume of that trade between China and India,
Yeah.
but animosity is very much there. So India has no other option but to put all its baskets in terms all its eggs in Trump's basket. There's no other option left for India. So just to keep China at bay and just to secure its own borders,
Hmm.
because whenever China wanted it, it was to come in and it gives India a couple of slaps and go back. So that should not happen because according to Indians, so Indians have only one option to have good relations with America. But there will be some limits. If 700,000 Indians are to be transported back to India, then India will have to obviously look sideways.
Hmm.
And if India decides to join Russia, and it tries to come and have some conversation with Pakistanis, then things may change. But likelihood of such a drastic uh, change or alteration into the relationship seems quite unlikely because India too have antagonistic regime in Bangladesh. and Pakistan, it doesn't have good relations as ever. And then China. So the only alternative that is there for India to pursue is to have good relations with Russia, and they already have good relations with Iran. So there is a possibility, if push comes to shove, that there is a new bloc emerging. I was quite optimistic till 2022 that there might be new bloc emerging among the Muslim world too, with Turkey, Pakistan, and Malaysia being in the vanguard instead of Arabs and who are autocrats and who do not represent anybody. So this can happen, and with Turkey, Pakistan, Malaysia, and Iran, if they come together, it's a very viable bloc. So if alternative bloc comes into being, with Russia, India, and Iran, if they just tag along Afghanistan with them too, so it's going to be a very, very interesting scenario. National,
Do you think this would, that makes me think, do you think it would be sort of now with the US coming closer to the Russians, it would be easier for somebody like Pakistan to sort of also enter into trade deals with Russia, especially in the gas sector,
uh,
which it was already doing before the Ukraine war?
No, because our military establishment has great personal as well as institutional interests in America. We have F-16, we have ammunition, we have training from America. The mindset is absolutely pro-America.
But now the
And that
Americans
is
are on the same page with the Russians, so they would not object to Pakistan getting closer to
No,
Russia.
now I think a new situation will be unfolded in Russia too, because if they go into Ukraine and sit there and they establish some sort of a base there,
Yeah,
Putin will be quite ill at ease with such a prospect.
right.
I think it's not hunky dory for the Russians so far as the relationship with America is concerned. There's one problem with mercurial leadership, as Trump is. No, he may come up with any fantastical idea at any point of time while he is sleeping or he is in his washroom. He thinks and he picks up his phone. He tweets something.
He's not using
That's
his Twitter as much as he did last time,
Last time, yeah. Probably he is
which
far
is
too old
his,
to
which
decipher
is
the
a favor
tweets.
he's doing to the world. Uh,
Uh,
Last thing is about
yeah.
the military-industrial complex. I talked about it in my intro. You touched upon it very quickly, sir. Starmer, one opinion is that Starmer was supporting the Ukrainians and had a very pro-Zelenskyan approach because of that earth mineral deal that was taking place between the British and the Ukrainians. And then you talk about the American economic interests, which sort of dictate its foreign policy. Do you think economic interests are still big on the mind of these leaders as they engage diplomatically and design foreign policy?
Well, so far as military-industrial complex is concerned, the thing is that what America exports to the world is arms and ammunition.
Yeah.
That's the uh, biggest source of earning for America. Now, thing is that this message of peace that Donald Trump tries to disseminate all around the world, with arms and ammunition sold out to different countries. So, what sort of a peace would it be? So, here is another contradiction,
Mm.
and that is very, very starkly present, prevalent all around. So, and then if he does some sort of crackdown on industrial military complex, then Trump's own politics and its own position in White House will be in jeopardy. So that too is really a very, very tennis question to us. And if he continues with his peace initiative, then there would be a big hiatus between industrial military complex, which is very, very strong, and the president of USA. So, president of USA would be made quite irrelevant, I think, because they will be controlling American establishment and
The
American
Pentagon
establishment,
would become
uh,
stronger, you think?
Pentagon, yeah, that's right. And there would be widening gulf between American president and the Pentagon and, other decision-making bodies. So, so far as Europe is concerned, and Europe's support to Zelensky, I think Europe will have to talk to Putin. They will have to rethink and review its foreign policy towards Russia because Russia is minerally so rich, and all the energy crisis that Europe currently finds itself in. The only
Hmm.
way out to get out of that mess, is to have cordial relations with Russia. Just talk to them, and and this NATO should not be extended anywhere. I don't see NATO going anywhere from where it already is. So Ukraine is out of NATO, Ukraine is out of European Union, and if Ukraine stays out of NATO and European Union, I think Putin will not have any problem with the rest of Europe, and they should have a transactional relationship to start with, and then obviously some cordiality have to be started between Russia and Europeans. That's for the good of anyone, and the Europeans will have to think in terms of its own security concerns. Relying on unequivocal reliance on America, I think that means any sense and sanity.
Thank you so much. We've reached the end of the slotted time for the interview. Thank you, Dr. Kamran, for
Okay.
joining us.
And thank you. It was such a pleasure talking to you, Asad. I hope we will chat informal chat should happen between us at least once a month, so that we can enlighten each other. Uh,
Absolutely, absolutely. And we'd love to keep having you back on this platform as
yeah.
well and carry on
And
the
I hope
policy.
I haven't disappointed you with my answers.
Not at all. Like always, it was a pleasure. Not at all. Not at all. My audience and I have learned, both have learned very much from you. Thank you so much.